All right, let's delve right into us. Joining us live from Melbourne is Pro Vice-Chancellor of Sports Strategy at Victoria University, Professor Hans Westerbeek, and CEO of the NBL, Jeremy Loliger. And also at the desk with us this morning is Andrew Larratt, Executive General Manager of Sport Business at Sport Australia. Good morning to you all. Thanks for joining us.
How are we all this Saturday?
Good to be here.
Good. Yeah, there might be a bit of a delay, Melbourne. Yes, we got the reaction. Now, I will start with you, Andrew, because, look, I look at these stories and I conducted those little interviews there. It fills me with optimism when I think about what sport can do.
Look, I mean, we've set out an aspiration to be the world's most active sporting nation. We've had to move from just sport to sport and physical activity, but we know right down at the local community level, this is the glue that can actually connect our community all together. So it is exciting. Yeah.
Professor, when it comes to the business behind sport, there is an important difference between those who govern a team and those who actually run it.
I think it's important to realise that there's a value explosion going on in the world of sport right now, which has that effect on those who run sport and those who own sport. And that, in turn, is delivered through a digital transformation, if you like. Digital technology is really changing the way, shape and manners in which we consume sport. And, you know, throwing it back to that social change, yes, there's sport for social change, and it is positive. But the money that at the moment is going on in sport through application of digital technology and the reach that sport has through digital technology can go both in a positive and negative direction. And you know, that has implications for those who own sports, the traditional owners in federations, but also the new owners in terms of private entities or private individuals with a lot of money who use that digital technology to transform sport into this new entity.
Jeremy, I want to begin our conversation with you with another congratulations with the work you and your team have done with the game of basketball in this country. And the first question is a question that is a fresh question for me, because I went down to Wollongong during the week, and we're going to have more on this through the course of the program. But the whole story around LaMelo Ball, this young, prodigious talent out of the United States that has 4.5 million followers on Instagram, through your program, coming to a place like Wollongong, he's putting it on the map. It's a working-class city, and the social change that can come with that is just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, at the end of the day, a sporting league, but we don't run sport other than, I guess, hosting competitions. What we really are is a privately owned media and entertainment business, and we're storytellers. And in this instance, we've got a phenomenal story in LaMelo Ball, who's come from a very different background to most athletes making their way into professional sport. And it's been an enormous success before he's even set foot in the country, both in drawing attention to the league, but also giving kids, both in Australia and around the world, another aspirational model to look to. And, you know, it's manna from heaven for us in the business of storytelling in sport.
Andrew, in terms of sport here in Australia, as you've touched on, we are a sporting nation. We love it here. But how do we keep this alive, going from kids through to adults? Because I played sport all my life as a kid, stopped when I was sort of mid-20s, and the body stopped too. But how do we keep that transition going and make it still a part of our culture?
Yeah, look, I mean, for a start, there's some sort of really poor results at the moment. We've got around only 1 in 5 children are meeting the physical activity guidelines of 60 minutes. So we realise for them to meet that, they need to be confident to move. So schools and getting boys and girls physically literate is what we call. So in the old days, it was fundamental movement skills, being able to throw and run and catch and jump and those sorts of things. So really what we have to do is give those skills to the kids, but it's more now than just those physical things. It's also the mental health, the social side of it, all of those components to make a well-rounded child to be able to move throughout life, because if you've moved as a child, you're more likely to move as an adult.
Look, I'm a lot older than Julius. TV started in black and white when I started, Professor, but there's a lot of private ownership in sport now, way more than there ever was. What are the consequences of private ownership of sport?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a double-edged sword. Private ownership, on the one hand, offers an opportunity for a lot of people who may not have accessed sport before to basically become involved, because private owners can move a lot quicker and a lot faster in terms of offering opportunities. But the flip side of that coin is that private owners, first and foremost, are in it to make a profit. And part of that profit may not go back to sport. And in some instances make sport inaccessible for those layers of communities that need it most. And you can see that, at the very global level, where people like Sheikh Mansour, deputy ruler of the United Arab Emirates, buys Manchester City and sets up the City Group, and builds that into a sport business mogul that has very little to do with community sport. On the other hand, governments and federations and national sports organizations struggle to maintain their flow of income and commercial income in particular, because some of that elite part of sport is siphoned off to private ownership. So the big challenge is, how do we continue to keep sport and participation in sport affordable for all communities?
Well, Jeremy, do you think that increase in private ownership is affecting things at a community level?
I think it is affecting things at a community level, certainly in our sport, and very much in a positive way. So we've, in our instance, in the NBL, private ownership was born out of necessity because there'd been an abject market failure of the previous ownership, in the sense that it was seen only about the sport, and there wasn't enough being done to bring finances into the economy of the basketball industry. And so we look at it now as, yes, it's sport, but the sport is the asset of what is essentially a media business, an entertainment business. And taking that different approach and being able to, I guess, taking a more entrepreneurial stance in respect of the business has meant that we're able to deliver both at the professional level, but then use some of the resources and interest that we're developing in the professional league to siphon down into grassroots sport. We've started with NBL 1 now in Victoria, Canberra and Tasmania, and we're looking to take that nationally in order to provide pathways from grassroots community basketball into professional sport here in Australia.
It's a difficult one, Andrew, isn't it? Because as we've just heard from the Professor and Jeremy, where can we find that happy medium? Because money doesn't fall off trees. It is the root of all evil. It's all this stuff. So we need the money, but we also need it to be done properly. We need the community to be integrated, and private owners want their pound of flesh.
Yeah, look, it is. It's a tough one, and each sport's different. But we need to make sure that the system's connected. So boys and girls that are playing at the grassroots level, that there's a pathway for them all the way through. And then at a league level, where private owners are in, they're investing back in the game, as Jeremy talked about there with basketball. So it is a challenge, but I think more broadly in Australian sport, with this private ownership coming in investment, we've got to actually rethink the structure and governance of sport in this country. Because what we had back from Federation and over the last 100 years is not fit for purpose today. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing some of these commercial operators seeing where there's a market failure and actually coming in. And now it's about how the sport itself can adapt and grow. Because we've got to remember that who are the fans? They're ultimately the people out there that probably more highly likely understand the rules of the game. They played the game. They understand it. And if they're going to be the fans of it, then we need to make sure that there's a connected system as a whole.
And going with the times. And look, I think that, to be honest, as we wrap it up, with time's going to always kill us on this show, there's way more positives, and we heard about it when we're talking about the things that are happening within the United Nations and around the world. And what we've all discussed here is something that we just need to work with the times. We need to change the way we think a bit.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this morning. It is something that we could continue to talk about. I think we're about to see plenty more basketball too with those.
Wait till you see LaMelo.
I'm so excited.
Changing the,
I'm so excited.
The steel city of they're so excited. People ringing up saying, Wollongong, how do you spell Wollongong? Yeah.
Is that your American accent?
I know it's a very bad American accent. But thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend.